Joining us next in the fireside chat is a visionary lawmaker, Dr. Pavan Duggal, expert in cyber law and e-commerce law, Supreme Court of India, with Dr. Deepak Kumar Sahu, Chief Editor, VAR India. Dr. Pavan Duggal is an advocate specializing in the field of cyber law and e-commerce. He has been recognized as one of the best cyber lawyers around the world. He has made a tremendous impact with an international reputation as an expert and authority on cyber law, cybersecurity law, and e-commerce law. He is the president of Cyber Law Asia, Asia's pioneering organization committed to the passing of dynamic cyber laws in the Asian continent. He is also a member of the WIPO Arbitration and Mediation Center panel of neutrals.
Let me introduce about the topic, how to mitigate fraud in a digital world. So with the growing use of internet and developing advanced technology systems globally, there has been an apparent increase in the usage of online banking system across the world, accompanied by widespread incidents of fraud and attack. Cybercrime can impact business in more than just financial ways. Companies have to rethink how they collect and store information and ensure that sensitive information is not vulnerable. Secondly, the attackers behind the campaign exploited the current prevalence of being your own device policies by using the stolen credentials to register their own devices on the target network, which they can use to expand their presence on the network and propagate the attack. Further, it is important for business to have company-wide security plans to place, ensure employees help protect sensitive company data. So on this backdrop, I request Dr. Pavan Duggal to speak address on the topic.
Good evening, good afternoon, good day, wherever you are, in whichever part of the world. Today, we are living in very transient times. The COVID-19 is substantially over. We are on the long tail of the recovery of COVID-19. But this COVID-19 has had an immense impact on almost every activity that we do in our day-to-day lives. No wonder the coming of COVID-19 has had a real substantial impact upon cyberspace per se. In fact, the world is always going to be now seen as pre-COVID and post-COVID, because this COVID has been the dividing line. In my recent book, New Cyber World Order Post-COVID-19, I've argued that by the time nations are victorious against the current and subsequent wave of COVID-19 infections, we will enter into a new cyber age where a new cyber world order will be awaiting us. And two essential elements of the new cyber world order will be that there will be massive increase in cyber crimes, which will become our daily companion in life. And number two, there will be massive increase of cybersecurity breaches, which will become the new default normal. And no wonder we've begun to start seeing that with the coming of COVID-19, the golden age of cybercrime has already begun. Cybercrime has been with us for the last more than 50 years, but the manner in which cybercrime has grown, its ambit, applicability, and finally its economic impact has been humongous during the times of the pandemic. In fact, this particular pandemic time has told us that there is three major cyber crimes which have engaged the attention of almost all stakeholders globally, including in India. And these trinity of cyber crimes include phishing, identity theft, and online financial fraud. Ultimately, they are nothing but manifestations of digital fraud, and they are having a massive impact already. The year 2020 saw the world losing more than $6 trillion as a result of these cybersecurity breaches. And by the time it's the end of 2021, the world had already lost more than $8 trillion thanks to these cyber crimes and cybersecurity breaches. So the cost of these cyber crimes is constantly increasing. In the next couple of years, we should be hitting $10.5 trillion as the global cost of cyber crimes and cybersecurity breaches. So consequently, one of the fundamental issues that come up for consideration for digital stakeholders is how can we take appropriate steps to mitigate the frauds in the digital times. Let me begin by stating the obvious. There's nothing known as absolute security. What was secure yesterday is not secure today. And what is secure today will definitely not be secure tomorrow. So cybersecurity is a constant moving target. And these cyber criminals are constantly innovating while they are on their feet. On top of it, they have to realize that they must be highly proficient in technology and the latest tech trends so as to leave the law enforcement agencies far behind. No wonder new innovative approaches, methodologies, programs, initiatives, and distinctive kind of planning gets done in order to come up with new distinctive mechanisms of trying to defraud people at large. And today, it's not just individuals who are at the risk of losing as a result of this cyber fraud, it's organizations that are actually bearing a big brunt of this huge, massive increase in cyber fraud. No wonder ransomware has become one of the most preferred methodologies for targeting organizations primarily, but also individuals. And ransomware has grown to such enormous proportions that every 11 seconds, one company anywhere in the world becomes a victim of a ransomware attack. So these kinds of ransomware attacks are ultimately only concerned about the data so that they can have access to data, they can encrypt the data, and then not just get money for decrypting the said data, but also for selling the said data, both on the superficial net as also on the dark net. No wonder this is a logical trend given the advent of the data economy, where the data is the new oil of the data economy. So in this ecosystem, we quickly start realizing that most of the time, corporate stakeholders are not particularly very well prepared to deal with this enormous challenge of growing frauds in the digital world. Well, most of the corporates tend to say, well, we will actually consider it and we will deal with it as it comes across. But we have to quickly start realizing that in cyberspace, this mindset today does not bear any cogent results. The reason for this is that your data is always under attack. And if your systems are not going to be up to date, clearly you can potentially be facing a huge kind of a cyber attack, which could not just endanger your data, but also prejudicially impact your reputation, goodwill, standing, or repute. So the fundamental question that comes up for consideration is how to mitigate frauds in this digital world. So if you're a corporate, if you're a company, if you are a legal entity that's dealing with any of the 7 raw materials in today's world, that is if you use computers, computer systems, computer networks, computer resources, communication devices, as also data and information in the electronic form, you have to be prepared for these kinds of cyber attacks. These cyber frauds are now coming up with new ingenious methodologies for purposes of defrauding, not just individuals, but also companies and the data that's resident on the devices and the networks per se. So a company can typically try to potentially mitigate these frauds in a given time by taking some cogent steps. The first step that logically should come to your mind is, let's make our systems more secure. And we can do that through efficient technology. Technology is constantly growing, but new technological products are now being offered by various stakeholders, by vendors and companies across the world, which are having all their own distinctive kind of features and characteristics. So you have a huge market to choose from, and you're spoiled for choice. So please determine what are your top priorities, what are your crown jewels that you really want to protect, and on that basis, you can go ahead and make your own purchases as to which particular cybersecurity product or service you really want to subscribe to. But apart from the technical aspect, there is also a legal and a policy aspect connected with the mitigation of cyber frauds. This is so because you have to understand that you have to take steps to avoid these kinds of cyber frauds. And you have to take steps to secure your systems. So if you are a legal entity in India, then you have to realize there are activities in India are governed by the Indian Information Technology Act 2000, which is India's mother legislation on the digital format. This legislation is 22 years old, but this legislation is a special law passed by Parliament, and its provisions prevail over anything inconsistent therewith contained in any other law for the time being in force. So please remember, you don't need to be a lawyer to know that if you do any activity in the digital world, the Information Technology Act 2000 governs your activities. You need to effectively know that every act of yours in the digital ecosystem has got legal ramifications, which are detailed and defined, not just under the Indian cyber law, but also under various rules and regulations that the government has passed under the Indian IT Act. Now, today, in the ecosystem that we are living in, we as a company, we as an organization, we as an individual, are not only generating our own data, but are also dealing with a lot of third-party data. This is data pertaining to clients, customers, various other business associates, business partners, and the like. So the moment you as a company are dealing, handling, or processing third-party data, you become a unique kind of a classified creature under law. The law classifies you as an intermediary. Intermediary has been defined under the IT Act to mean any legal entity who on behalf of another person is receiving, storing, or transmitting any particular electronic record or providing services with respect to that record. And of course, the term intermediary includes not just network service providers, internet service providers, web hosting companies, online auction portals, online payment sites, cyber cafes, search engines, and online marketplaces. So just about any company today who is providing email connectivity to their employees, or who's providing a mobile connectivity, or even an email account or an email service to their respective employees, customers, clients, you become an intermediary. Now, the moment you are an intermediary, Section 79 of the Indian Information Technology Act 2000 wants you to exercise due diligence while you discharge your obligations under the law. Now, these parameters of due diligence have been defined under various rules and regulations. These were defined under the IT Rules 2011 and have now been subsequently, shall I say, ratified and clarified in the Information Technology Rules 2021. But one fundamental responsibility that lies upon you as an intermediary company is that the law wants you to implement and maintain reasonable security practices and procedures while you're dealing, handling, or processing third-party data. And the information technology, reasonable security practices, and sensitive personal data or information rules 2011 categorically say that an ISO 27001 is an example of reasonable security practices and procedures. Now, a lot of people believe that the law is requiring me to be certified as ISO 27001 certified, and only then will I be able to get some protection under the law. That's a misnomer. The law says, I want you to follow reasonable security practices and procedures. And for that, even if you're not satisfied as certified by the concerned standards organization, but even if you fulfill the main conditions of the certification, which is known as ISO 27001, you shall be presumed to have been duly complied with reasonable security practices and procedures. The IT Rules 2021 in Rule 3 have once again reiterated this responsibility for all corporates who are intermediaries. And the way the term intermediary is defined under the Indian cyber law, it's very clear that 9.5 out of 10 companies in India qualify as intermediaries. So the first step that the law wants you to do is please go ahead and implement the broad principles of an ISO 27001 if you really want to escape liability, because the law has now for the first time gone ahead and come up with legal liability. By and large, from 2008 till 2021, all companies who were intermediaries were made not liable for third-party data or information. But now the IT Rules 2021 have put in a criminal color to this entire landscape. So if you are an organization and you don't take reasonable security practices and procedures while you are implementing or doing your day-to-day functions. And as a result of your negligence, some loss is occurred to someone else. Maybe it's a fraud, some money is lost, whatever. Then the law says it's going to be your responsibility to really go ahead and make good the loss that's made. So that's why the law is now stipulated civil liability, that if you don't comply with the parameters of the IT Act and the IT rules, and including reasonable security practices and procedures, then be prepared for paying unlimited damages by way of compensation under Section 43A of the IT Act. Also be prepared as a company that your top management should go to jail, because criminal liability has been stipulated for the first time under Rule 7 of the IT Rules 2021. So if you are not prepared for doing all this, then better thing is to ensure compliance with law. And the moment you ensure compliance with the due diligence and the parameters of the IT Act and rules and regulations, you not only do a great service towards mitigating these kinds of dangers of cyber frauds in the cyber ecosystem, but more significantly, you tend to get the benefit of the Suraksha Kavach that the law provides you, the statutory exemption from legal liability that the law promises you, which effectively means that if you've done your compliances, then even if a fraud takes place on your network, no problem. The law says you can be sued, but the law promises you that you cannot be forced to pay 1 rupee damages by way of compensation. Also, the law promises you that you shall not be sent to jail. So one fundamental choice a company has to make today is, does it really want to look at jail as an option, or does it want to do proactive compliance? I think that's a no-brainer for us to conclude that if you do proactive compliances, then it will be much more better for you not just to protect the legal interests of the company, but also for the purposes of ensuring that your reputation, goodwill, standing, and repute is not prejudicially impacted in any manner as a result of these exercises. In addition from this, you have to also quickly realize that India is currently seeing a very distinct transient policy. We are living through times where India does not have any dedicated law on cybersecurity. We are also transiently living in an ecosystem where India either does not have a law on data protection, we also don't have a law on privacy. So given this kind of distinct lack of policies and laws on these three crucial elements, it's like virtually a very fertile ecosystem for cyber criminals to target individuals for all kinds of cyber frauds and cyber crimes. No wonder in the Indian ecosystem, we have begun to start seeing that the Jamtara model of cybercrime has massively increased. In fact, the coming of COVID-19 has effectively seen the cottage industrialization of not just the Jamtara model, but also cottage industrialization of cybercrimes per se. Today, when a lot of people have lost their jobs and their vocations, they've all invariably turned towards cybercrime, as cybercrime promises to pay them quick, rich, easy dividends, and not much training is required in any case. So we have begun to start seeing Jamtara kind of cybercrime clusters in different states, in different rural areas and semi-urban areas across the country as a whole. And that's a big, tall, problematic exercise. Why? Because the law is not very well prepared to deal with this kind of ecosystem. Well, cyber fraud per se is not covered under the Information Technology Act 2000 as a crime. Yes, cyber fraud could be seen to be just mere cheating or fraud under the Indian Penal Code. But given the unique kind of new challenges that cyber frauds are coming forward, there are now distinctive new vistas that we have to specifically address. And the beauty is that because there's lack of capacity building, most of the people are getting to become victims of these cyber frauds. It's not just uneducated people, it's educated people, the elderly, the professionals who are landing up losing money because they have, without application of mind, they shared their financial details, their credit card details, or other credentials with these scamsters, and they found out that the money has been lost. So clearly, there's a legal requirement. You must, as a company, make sure that you're on the side of the law so that you can protect yourself, because you are not an astrologer. You cannot predict when the next cyber fraud is going to come and hit your system. So you have to be in a state of constant readiness. And therefore, as we go forward, whether you are individual, whether you are an organization, there are certain key steps that you must follow as part of your day-to-day regimes in order to mitigate the challenges that are thrown up by the entire issue of cyber frauds in the digital world. First and foremost, let's learn to start recognizing the value and significance of cybersecurity in our lives. Let's start adopting cybersecurity as a way of life. India has only been giving lip service to cybersecurity, and consequently, we have been seeing that India has been constantly under attack by these cyber frauds. Therefore, we have to not just adopt cyber security, but more significantly, also adopt proactively the phenomenon of cyber resilience. Cyber resilience presumes that you will be attacked. And therefore, the important issue is not that you are attacked. The important issue is how quickly can you come back to a state of normalcy after getting attacked. That's very important. And therefore, we have to start adopting also cyber resilience as part of our daily corporate practices. Also, some common cyber hygiene methodologies will always help. Having a good secure system is a great starting point. Having a good antivirus program, having a good firewall are good to have practices. Also ensuring that we today do not become part of the great Indian vomiting revolution. Indians, unfortunately, are vomiting information about their personal, professional, and social lives without understanding the legal ramifications of the same. So consequently, let's learn to be not part of the great Indian vomiting revolution. Let's only learn to share information on a need-to-know basis. Let's be consciously alert and duly diligent when we are doing the digital activities. In case if you're doing your financial transactions, please look at your passwords, try to change them every 3 days to 7 days. Use, if possible, alphanumeric passwords. Try as far as possible to review each and every of your banking transaction that's done online. If any transaction has not been done by you, you must instantaneously report. The government of India has today provided you the facility of online reporting at the government cybercrime reporting portal, being cybercrime.gov.in. In addition, you can also call up the national helpline number 155260 for reporting these kinds of cyber frauds. And the beauty is that because this national cybercrime helpline number is manned not by call center executives, but by police officials, they are able to go ahead and freeze the money while it is in the pipeline before it's finally taken out by the cyber criminal out of the system. So the quicker you report, the better it is. And also remember that even when you lose your money in a cyber fraud, that's not the end of the life. That's a great learning moment, a learning episode in our lives, and we have to be consciously be careful as we go forward. Also remember that the Reserve Bank of India already has now come up with a notification of July 2017, which says that if a cyber fraud takes place into your account without your permission, without your active involvement, then you are entitled to get the entire money back from the bank. And the bank will be now mandated to get the said money back into your account. If they don't do so, they'll themselves face legal consequences. So the law is doing its own respective bit in terms of trying to protect the digital stakeholders. The technology is available, but ultimately it's all about holistic approaches. It's the need for more capacity building and creation. That's the need of the hour. Why? Because we have seen in companies, whether it's top management, whether it's senior or mid-level management, because there is an absence of dedicated focus on cybersecurity, one finds that most of the time, people invariably end up becoming either victims of cyber frauds or other kinds of cyber security breaches or other cyber crimes per se. And therefore, in that regard, a lot of stakeholders have to contribute. For example, we have created an online platform called cyberlawuniversity.com, where we are offering distinctive courses on cyber law, cyber security, and cyber crimes. And these courses in the last 4 years have already been done by more than 27,000 students from 174 countries, speaking 52 national languages. These figures are only telling us one key element, that there's a need for massive capacity building. And I think all stakeholders have to constantly keep on harping on the need for more capacity building. Stakeholders have to get engaged into more capacity building and orientation programs, awareness level programs, so that if you are able to empower the ultimate digital user, then that goes a long way in terms of preventing not just these kinds of cyber frauds, but also in strengthening and in creating of a secure and safe and reliable cyberspace. Those are some of the key parameters that I believe any and every digital stakeholder in today's ecosystem must keep in mind in case you have to take effective, cogent steps to mitigate the immense challenges that cyber frauds are bringing forward in our day-to-day lives in the digital world.
Thank you, Dr. Duggal, for sharing the reality bites related to the cyber law and its consequences. As organizations expand work from home and remote working solutions for their employees, the number of vulnerable endpoints increases. Hence, the demand for endpoint security will become highly necessary.